During a violent thunderstorm, a black luxury car crashes into a tree off a rural road. Trapped inside is a billionaire tycoon, a man used to power, wealth, and getting his way. But tonight, all that vanishes with a flicker of lightning. Bleeding, disoriented, and soaked, he finds himself face to face with the one person he'd humiliated earlier that day. A young black boy from the neighborhood. With no one else in sight and the floodwaters rising, the man must now rely on the child he once mocked to save his life. Think justice is always served in a courtroom? Think again. This story takes it to the streets. Location: South Creek Back Road. Time: 7:52 p.m. in the middle of a lightning storm. Rain hammered the earth like it meant to break it. The wind screamed through the trees, tearing at branches and scattering limbs across the road. Power lines hissed. The sky split with lightning that lit up the darkness for just seconds at a time. In the middle of that chaos, a black luxury sedan sat smoking at the edge of a bend. Its front end was crumpled around a fallen tree, the hood dented like crushed foil. One headlight flickered wildly, the other completely dark. Inside, billionaire industrialist Charles Redford slumped against the driver's seat. His face was pale, and blood trickled down his temple, dripping slowly onto the collar of his tailored white shirt. His breathing was shallow. The airbags had not deployed. He groaned, shifting slightly. His phone was somewhere on the floor, unreachable. The world outside blurred into storm and shadow. Then a light pierced the dark. A beam, narrow, steady. It moved through the rain like a sword, closer, closer, until it hit the shattered driver's window. Behind it stood a boy, barefoot, drenched, holding a small flashlight that barely worked. Charles blinked, trying to focus. The boy leaned in. "Sir, you okay?" The voice was familiar, steady, young. Something about the way he said it brought a flicker of memory. Hours earlier, Charles had stopped at a gas station just outside town. He had barked at a kid for standing too close to his car, told him to move, called him useless. And now, that same boy stood in the storm, rain rolling down his cheeks, offering help. Charles tried to speak. His lips barely moved. The boy reached for the handle. "Don't move too much, okay? I'm going to get help." Rain poured harder. The storm raged louder. But in that moment, inside a wrecked car and beneath a shattered sky, something else broke open. Have you ever had to help someone who disrespected you? What would you do? Because sometimes character shows up when comfort disappears. Malik was 12, though people often mistook him for older. Maybe it was the way he carried himself. Maybe it was the way he watched the world, eyes alert, shoulders squared, ready to face whatever came next. He lived with his mother and little sister, Ava, in a small trailer tucked behind a line of trees near the edge of town. It was not much: one bedroom, a leaky roof, and a heater that rattled when it worked. But it was theirs. His mother, Tanya, worked 2 shifts at the diner on Main. She came home with sore feet and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. Malik did what he could to help. He got Ava ready for school, packed their lunches, and cleaned the trailer before doing his own homework. He was clever and resourceful. Give him a pile of broken electronics, and he could pull out a working radio within the hour. Most of his tools were donated or found in dumpsters. His books were dog-eared survival manuals picked up from yard sales. He read them like they held the key to everything. In the woods behind their home, Malik built shelters from sticks and tarps. He practiced tying knots, starting fires with flint, and tracking small animals. His mother called it preparing. He called it making sure he was never caught off guard. Earlier that afternoon, during a break in the storm, Malik had walked Ava to a neighbor's house before heading toward the gas station for batteries. A black luxury sedan had pulled up just as he arrived. The windows were tinted, the engine too quiet. Malik approached, polite and calm. "Sir, you want your windshield wiped? Storm's coming back." The man inside barely looked at him. He rolled down the window an inch and sneered, "Get a real job." He tossed a crumpled dollar onto the pavement and drove off. Malik stood still, fists clenched. Then he picked up the bill without a word, shoved it into his pocket, and turned back toward the store. The wind picked up again. The sky darkened. Now, hours later, that same man's car was wrapped around a tree, steam rising from the hood, and Malik was standing in the rain, flashlight in hand, trying to keep him awake. He did not speak about the insult. He did not walk away. He simply asked, "Sir, you okay? Ever been looked down on because of where you're from? Share your story. Some kids carry more than backpacks. They carry grace." He simply asked, "Sir, you okay? Ever been looked down on because of where you're from? Share your story. Some kids carry more than backpacks. They carry grace." Charles Redford was 62 years old, silver-haired and razor-sharp, with a jawline as rigid as his worldview. He built his empire in pharmaceuticals, starting with a patent on a generic heart medication and expanding into a global chain of research labs and biotech firms. He was worth billions, not millions, billions. He was the kind of man who flew private, dined in silence, and dismissed small talk as weakness. His office was all glass and marble. His speeches centered around one belief: those who want success should earn it, without excuses, without sympathy. He had grown up in wealth, prep schools, Ivy League degrees, summers in Europe. His father, a steel executive, never allowed idleness. Discipline was everything. Mistakes were punishable. Weakness was unforgivable. By his mid-30s, Charles had taken over a struggling pharma firm and turned it into a titan. He laid off thousands, streamlined operations, and pushed profits into record highs. The board called it genius. Critics called it ruthless. He called it necessary. To him, poverty was not a condition. It was a failure to work harder, plan better, think smarter. Handouts bred laziness. He had said as much, on camera, more than once. When his company expanded into land development, he saw it as vision, not displacement. He purchased wide swaths of land near the edge of town, land that happened to be home to working families. Families like Malik's neighbors. One by one, trailers disappeared. Redford's team called it progress. Plans showed blueprints for luxury cabins, private hiking trails, and helicopter access. The families had 30 days to vacate. Some left quietly, some begged. Redford never met them, never saw their faces. Earlier that night, he had attended a fundraiser in the city, his name at the top of the donor list, his picture on every screen. He left early, annoyed by delays. His driver had called in sick, so Redford took the wheel himself. He wanted quiet, away from the freeway. He took a back road. Rain began to fall. He gripped the wheel tighter. His phone buzzed with reminders, texts, market updates. Then lightning struck near the road. A branch crashed down. He swerved. Tires skidded. The sedan spun and slammed hard into a tree. The impact knocked the breath out of him. His head struck the frame. Blood blurred his vision. And now, slumped and half-conscious, he was no longer the man in control. He was trapped, alone. And out of the dark came the voice of a boy he had brushed off that very afternoon. the boy he had called useless, the boy who now stood in the rain, flashlight trembling in one hand, asking if he was okay. Have you ever seen power fall into the hands of the powerless? Sometimes the storm does more than damage. Sometimes it rewrites the balance. Malik recognized the car the moment his flashlight swept over it. The front grille, the tinted windows, the flawless black paint now dented and scorched. It was unmistakable. Charles Redford. The same man who tossed a crumpled dollar at his feet. The same voice that had told him to get a real job. But Malik did not hesitate. He dropped his flashlight into the crook of his elbow and ran to the driver's side. Rain pounded his shoulders as he yanked on the door handle. It would not budge. The metal was bent, the frame twisted. Smoke hissed from beneath the hood. "Sir, you have to move. Your car's leaking. It could catch fire." Inside, Redford groaned, head rolling toward the sound. His face was pale, blood smeared along his temple. He blinked. "You? What are you doing here?" Malik ignored the question. He backed away and dug through the small toolbox he had slung across his chest. He had been on his way home, batteries tucked in his coat pocket, wrench still wet from a quick fix at a neighbor's shed. He pulled out the tire iron. Rain streaked down the glass as he slammed it against the passenger window. Once, twice. On the third hit, the glass shattered. He reached in, unlocked the door, and shoved it open against the weight of the frame. Redford's body was slumped awkwardly. Malik leaned in and looped his arm under the man's shoulders. "Come on, sir. We have to go now." Redford winced in pain. His legs barely moved. "It hurts." "I know," Malik said. "But if we wait, this car's going up. I'm not leaving you here." He pulled hard, dragging the older man across the seat, through the shattered frame and out into the pouring rain. Behind them, a pop. Then a small flame danced beneath the hood. Malik gritted his teeth and dragged Redford 10, then 20 feet away. Smoke filled the air. Fire licked at the crushed grill. They collapsed near the edge of the road. Redford coughed, stunned. Malik just sat there, soaked and breathless, hands scraped and shaking. He had done what many would not. He had saved the life of a man who saw him as invisible. Would you save someone who belittled you? Or walk away? Comment below. True character is not built in the spotlight. It is proven in the storm. The rain did not let up. It poured in sheets, each gust of wind cutting through clothes and skin like ice. Malik knew they could not sit there much longer. The flames behind them crackled, consuming what remained of the black sedan. Malik reached into his backpack and pulled out a scarf, one his mother had knitted years ago. It was old, frayed at the edges, but dry. He wrapped it around Redford's bleeding head, tying it firmly but gently. Redford winced. "What is this?" "Pressure," Malik answered. "You need to stay awake. Can you walk?" Redford shifted, testing his legs. He groaned, nearly collapsing. Not far. Malik looked up the road. The incline was steep, and the mud made it slick. But halfway up, there was an abandoned service shed with a covered roof. He had passed it before on bike rides. It was their only shot. He slung Redford's arm over his shoulder. "We've got to move." They rose slowly. Redford staggered, leaning heavily on the boy. His expensive shoes slipped in the mud. Malik planted his feet firmly, inching forward one step at a time. "Why are you helping me?" Redford muttered. "After what I said to you?" Malik did not stop moving. "Because you need it, and no one else is coming." The answer hung between them, clearer than any accusation. Redford did not speak again. A branch snapped behind them. Then came the sound of wood splitting, sharp and violent. A tree crashed down across the road, right where they had been moments before. They both froze. Rain lashed their faces. Malik gripped tighter. "We have to keep going," he said. Their pace quickened, Redford limping, Malik dragging most of the weight. Each step felt heavier than the last. Malik's muscles screamed. His lungs burned, but he did not stop. At last, the shed appeared, tilted, rusted, but standing. He led Redford under its awning and eased him onto the concrete floor. Redford leaned back against the wall, eyes closed, breathing in shallow pulls. Malik crouched beside him, checking the scarf, then scanning the storm. They had made it. For now. What keeps you going when everything is against you? Share below. Sometimes strength is not loud. It is simply not letting go. The wind had not fully died, but the worst of the storm had passed. Malik guided Redford through the trees, their path lit only by the soft beam of Malik's dim flashlight. Every few steps, Redford stumbled, leaning heavier with each one. Just when it seemed they might collapse where they stood, Malik pointed ahead. An old hunting shack stood hidden between the trees. Its wooden frame sagged from years of weather, but it still held. It had no lock, only a latch. Malik pushed it open with his shoulder. They stepped into a room that smelled like pine and ash. "Sit there," Malik said, pointing to a bench by the back wall. Redford lowered himself slowly, hissing through his teeth. Malik pulled off his wet hoodie, revealing a smaller backpack underneath. From it, he took a small lighter and a bundle of dry wood wrapped in plastic. "Kids in the neighborhood keep this here," he explained. "We come here sometimes when the power's out." Redford watched silently as the boy crouched by the small stone hearth and sparked the flame. In minutes, a fire flickered to life, casting orange light around the room. Malik stood and looked around. He pulled out an old flannel shirt from a box and handed it to Redford. "You're shaking. Put this on." Redford nodded, slipping it on slowly with his good arm. Malik pulled out a roll of fabric and unwrapped it to reveal a homemade splint kit. He sat on the floor beside Redford and examined the injured arm. "You broke something," he said quietly. "This is going to hurt." Redford flinched as Malik tied wooden braces to either side of his forearm. The boy's hands were steady, quick, focused. "You live like this?" Redford asked, his voice rough. "Out here." Malik tied the last knot and sat back on his heels. "Most nights, yeah. When the power's out, when the trailer leaks, when it's quieter here than at home." Redford looked around the shack. The patched walls, the makeshift supplies, the quiet dignity of a space made livable through necessity. He looked down at his hands. "I didn't know." "You didn't ask," Malik said simply. Outside, the storm whispered through the branches. Inside, the fire cracked softly. Ever learned something humbling from someone you underestimated? Share below. Sometimes the biggest truths come from the smallest voices. The storm roared just outside the shed, wind rattling the rusted metal walls. Malik sat on a pile of cracked bricks, catching his breath. Redford leaned against the far corner, his breathing uneven but steadying. His hands trembled as he reached into the inner pocket of his soaked blazer. He pulled out his wallet. "I can pay you," Redford said, voice shaking. "I have thousands in here. You saved my life. Take it." He held the wallet out, fingers pale and slick with rain. Bills peeked out from the leather fold. Malik stared at it, but did not move. "Money won't fix the homes you tore down," he said quietly. The words did not carry anger, just truth. Redford blinked. The hand holding the wallet dropped slowly. He stared at the boy, searching his face for something he could not define. Malik's eyes stayed locked on his. "You came through our neighborhood with papers and machines, said it was progress, said it was legal, but you never looked at us. Not once." Redford said nothing, just listened. Malik glanced out at the storm, then back at the man he had dragged through the rain. "You asked why I helped you. It wasn't for money. It's because I would want someone to help my mom if she were trapped. Or my sister. That's the difference." Redford swallowed hard. His hands curled into fists. "Then tell me," he said slowly. "Tell me what will make it right." Malik sat with the question. He thought about the trailers that vanished, the playground that was now rubble, the old men on porches with no place to go. "Build something that helps," Malik said, "not something that pushes us out. Start there." Redford gave a slow nod. The storm outside began to ease, just a little. What would you say if given a chance to speak truth to power? Drop it below. Change begins when silence ends. 3 days later, the sun returned, casting gold across the town square. Reporters gathered beneath a white canopy outside City Hall. Microphones stood ready. Cameramen adjusted lenses. Curious residents filled the sidewalks, whispering about why the billionaire had called a press conference. Charles Redford stepped to the podium. He wore a simple black suit. No designer labels, no entourage. A fresh bandage peeked from beneath his collar. His hands gripped the edges of the lectern like they were keeping him upright. "I want to thank you for being here," he began, voice low but steady. "3 nights ago, I nearly died in a storm, alone, scared, injured." He paused, looking out at the crowd. "I was saved by a boy I had insulted, ignored, looked down on." His voice cracked slightly. He took a breath. "His name is Malik. He pulled me from a burning car. He carried me through mud and wind and falling trees. He patched my wounds with a scarf meant for his family." Redford looked down at his notes, then set them aside. "And I realized something in that storm. Success means nothing if it forgets the people it steps on." Gasps rippled through the audience. Phones went up. Reporters leaned forward. "Effective immediately, I am reversing the development project near the East Ridge community. No luxury resort, no evictions." Cheers erupted. Some people clapped. Others simply stood stunned. "Instead," Redford continued, "my company will fund affordable housing repairs. We will restore the playground. We will rebuild the community center. And we will do it in partnership with the people who live there." He stepped back. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. Malik stood near the back of the crowd, hoodie damp from the morning dew. He listened without smiling. His face was calm, watchful. Miss Evelyn stood beside him, hand resting gently on his shoulder. "You believe him?" she asked, softly. Malik thought for a moment. "I'm not sure yet," he said. "But it's a start." Can people really change? What makes that change last? Leave your answer below. Sometimes redemption begins not with a speech, but with a choice. Storms do more than tear down trees and flood streets. They strip away the noise. They wash off the polish and reveal what is underneath. What stands, what breaks, what matters. On one storm-ravaged night, a boy who lived in a trailer stepped into the kind of moment that makes most people freeze. He moved forward, without help, without certainty, without promise of reward. Malik Freeman, 12 years old, no badge, no title, just grit, instinct, and heart. He pulled a man from a burning car, a man who had insulted him hours before, a man who had torn through his neighborhood like it was disposable. Malik patched his wounds, carried his weight, faced wind and lightning and falling trees with a jaw set firm and a mission clear. save the man. Not because he deserved it, because it was right. That moment did not make headlines for its scale. It was not a viral video or a staged hero story. It was something deeper. A shift, a lesson. A boy who had every reason to walk away chose to stay, and in doing so, he turned the tide. The man he saved, Charles Redford, faced himself in the aftermath, and what he saw made him change course. Plans halted, promises made, resources redirected toward the community he had once ignored. But this is not Redford's story. This is Malik's. He did not save someone to prove a point. He did not speak for attention. He acted because that is who he is, because someone needed help, because someone had to step up. One night, one storm, one chance to do the right thing. He took it, and now the whole city knows his name, Malik Freeman. They know his story not because he shouted it, but because it echoed. Through streets, through homes, through hearts. Storms have a way of revealing who we are. Who are you when the storm comes? Share this story. Say his name, Malik Freeman.